Hello, everyone. I'm here today to do a video of my favorite books that I read in 2024. I'm a list guy, so I like to do lists at the end of the year. And yeah, this is going to be a combination of books that I listen to on Audible and the physical copies. I tend to read more physical, but I did a few long road trips. And so, yeah, some Audible snuck in there as well, but I'll let you know before each one. So, to start off, this is all my opinion, of course. There's a lot of things that I have for books that I know are just like me problems. I'll talk about those during the video as well. And yeah, I loved every single one of the books I read this year. I have like some nits to pick with a few of them, but really I would suggest any one of these. And yeah, it was a great year for reading. So yeah, without further ado, I'll start from I guess my bottom book, but I still loved it. So let's start there. Okay. Lessons in Chemistry was the first one here. And this is a book about a chemist in the 1950s who becomes a daytime TV host for a cooking show. And it kind of just goes into how she's has like these gender norms that she has to follow, and how she doesn't really want to be part of this cooking show. She's kind of just like this, she's fitting into a stereotype there, but she uses that platform to like send a message to mothers that are cooking food for their families and just gives them empowerment. And it's got a really awesome message to it. I guess my nits about it is I found the characters pretty one-dimensional a lot of the time, and a decent amount of the things that were going to be twists and such in the book I found kind of predictable, but I still thought it was great, really well written, and would recommend it. So, Lessons in Chemistry. Number two is Convenience Store Woman. This is a short little book. It's like 150 pages, I think, and it's the second book I've I've read by this author, and it's really interesting. It goes into I think she's like in her mid 30s. She's working at a convenience store and is just all about following regimented rules. She loves just like the stocking of the shelves. She needs everything like to be on the dot. And then you kind of learn it's because she has this like very crippling social anxiety and just this really hard time fitting into the norms of the culture she lives in. And she meets some people and she starts to break away from them. The only reason it's this low is she has another book called Earthlings, which is like one of my favorite books I've ever read. And this just feels like the testing prototype ground for that book. So yeah, it's still fantastic. I would recommend it, but Earthlings is where I really think she like hit her stride. So that's what I would recommend. Okay, Home Fire. I think this is the first book I read this year. I know it's based off of a Greek tragedy. I forgot which one exactly, but there is a forbidden love affair in this amongst like a British politician's son and one of the main characters, and it's kind of amidst like there's all these themes of like political warfare and tensions in the Middle East, and just kind of all these things are coming together, and it's very tense. There's lots of very heavy scenes, and everything kind of erupts into a tragic crescendo. It's definitely not for the light of heart. Only nit I have for this one is, at least for me, and then again a me thing, is the language got a little too kind of, I guess, flowery for me at times. There's like one scene in particular from a certain perspective that I thought was like the emotional climax of the book, and I felt like it was too stuck in its kind of own prose, I guess, to really land as hard as it could for me. But still a fantastic book. Okay, Evenings and Weekends. This is one I listened to on Audible towards the end of the year. This is, I think, the second to last book I read. And this is just about, there's this whale that washes up on the shore in London here, and it becomes like this central focus for everyone. It's kind of this thing that brings all the various characters of the books together to like either see it or talk about it or whatever. And it's like, it's in the peak of summer, everyone's hot, and everyone's kind of stressed out, and it just is about all these different characters that are either related or friends, and just all of them have some sort of dramatic thing that's happening in their life, or a truth they need to tell someone about, or something they're trying to hide. And all of those things are coming together for each character, and they're all colliding together at this one eventful weekend, and one eventful party in particular. And it's just, you see all these things they're building, like, oh no, is this thing's gonna hurt this person's feelings, this is gonna ruin this person's life. And it's just like really interesting. It did end incredibly suddenly when the last line said, and then it was like, and this was audible. I was like, wait, what happened? I had to like re-listen to the end. It did kind of come out of nowhere, but I loved all the characters. Great sense of place in London here, and I know this is the author's first book, so I can't wait to read what's next. Okay, crazy that this is this low on this, but Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is just like a really in-depth character study on this couple here that has some communication issues, to say the least. But yeah, this just really goes into like how being in their relationship, like what is said is just as important as what's not said. And there's just so many times where they just couldn't quite get on the same page with each other, and they break each other's hearts constantly. And it's really, sad, but it's kind of beautiful. Just like they're normal people that go through like, these trials and tribulations together, but their paths keep crossing no matter how much they hurt each other. And yeah, I guess I don't know. This is another me thing. It didn't have a ton of rising action in this book. Like there wasn't like this plot point that everything was going towards, and it's kind of just like a looking in on their lives. And I'm always a person that just loves like a strong kind of like rising action, everything that tensions are going towards, but brilliantly written. And I think Sally Rooney is really great at just getting into the relationships between people and how dependency and just everything. Very, very good book. It's also a TV show if you're interested. Okay, Crooked Plow. This was a book that was recommended by my friend Sam, and this is a story about farmers in Brazil. And there's this certain event that happens at the very beginning that has this lifelong effect on everyone in this town and in this family. And it's this like really subtle kind of magical realism that's just hanging under the surface of the story. I don't think I've ever read anything like that, where it's not this like overt fantasy element that's like has some metaphoric representation. It's just like, yeah, no, there's this thing. They're going to be thinking about the entire book, and it's going to be subtly kind of woven in and subtly influence everything. But it never is just like this. It's never this thing that like takes center stage. And I think that's really interesting. And at the very end, there's a certain perspective shift that's really amazing. And this is a book that I love the vibes to a ton. Like I just think about just this countryside here, and just they describe in detail of cooking the food or the chores they do or the houses they live in. And yeah, I don't know. Interesting read for sure. Crooked Plow, highly recommend. Okay. Again, crazy. This is this low on my list, but Demon Copperhead. This is going to be hyperbolic, but I think the first person narrator Demon is the most distinct, fully realized voice I've ever heard from a narrator before. It is pitch perfect at all times. There's not a single word that's written in here where I didn't believe that this character thought that or would say that. And it just kind of profiles his life from childhood to we're kind of just left not knowing exactly where his life's going to be going at the very end. But we see all sorts of really beautiful, funny, tragic scenes through Demon's life in amidst like the opium crisis in Virginia. And it just says a lot about kind of the American condition in particular. And yeah, I guess, again, me problems. I would say the two things for me that hold this book back a little bit is I do think it's too long. And I think that's a problem because it kind of just meanders at times. I didn't think every scene or character was necessary, so it didn't make the full impact it could have for me. And then similar to what I said for Normal People, it didn't have a rising action. It was almost like a memoir more, and it kind of just like gives you parts of the life here and there are some scenes, especially towards the end, where there's a rising action. There's a really consequential thing that happens, but I did think it took a little too long to get there. But the reason that I did love it so much still is just incredibly written. Would recommend this to anyone who like loves a strong, distinctive voice or just wants inspiration for that. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, Margot's Got Money Troubles is a book that came out this year and one I listened to. Oh, I listened to Demon Copperhead on Audible. I forgot to say that. That fantastic narrator for whoever did the voice for it. This is another one. I believe this is Dakota Fanning's sister did the Audible for this book, which was really cool. And it's going to be made into a A24 TV show, so that's really awesome. But Margot's Got Money Troubles is a story about she finds out she's going to be a mom with kind of a seedy guy. He's not you learn more about him, but she kind of goes into some areas to make some money that kind of are very much part of the social media internet age, and just how she is judged for that lifestyle choice that she makes, but also just kind of makes us ask questions about like what it means to be a mother in the modern day. And like, it's hilarious at times. This book, every character, her dad is like a ex-pro wrestler. And just, I don't know. You love people despite their flaws, and then there are other characters that you hate because of their flaws. But everyone just has this like really unique personality, and yeah, a great arc for Margot, and you're always cheering for her, and I loved it. Yep, that's what I got to say, I guess. Okay, Open Throat. This is a tiny book. This is like 150 pages, but their font's huge. You can just blast through this thing. It's from the perspective of a mountain lion that lives near the Hollywood sign in LA. It's actually based off of a real mountain lion. This is completely a fictional book. You're like in the perspective of the mountain lion. It's very like, has very much like a human personality, but I never thought I'd learned so much about like empathy and like just some of the downfalls of humanity and various things from this big cat. So it's really funny, really weird at times. Wild finish, just very climactic, and yeah, it's very interesting point of view, obviously, and I think it nails the tone throughout, and yeah, I loved it. Okay, The Knockout Queen, another Rufy Thorpe book. The same, I think this was written a few years ago. Same author as Margot's Got Money Troubles, but and I also listened to this on Audible. This book it hits really hard. It really goes in. It talks a lot about kind of violence and just like its role in our society, but just how it can tear people's lives apart. But also it's just really honest about like just how it affects everybody and like the violence that's within like everyday people. And then has a lot of themes of coming out in a small town and kind of the politics around that. And yeah, this very similar to Margot's Got Money Troubles, is every character has these like really glaring flaws, and you learn to love some and learn to hate others. And then another thing that this book that does, that I think lots of great books do, is it doesn't always let the people you want to have win, and a lot of times the people that you don't want to have things go their way, it does go their way for them. So yeah, I thought this book was phenomenal. Ends on like a beautiful note, sad note, and just yeah, it's fantastic. Ruthie Thorpe. Can't wait to see what you write next. I don't know what other book she has, but I would recommend, at least from the two I've read, anything she's written. Okay, The Bee Sting. I believe this was, I think this got second place for, it's either the Pulitzer or the Booker. I always mix those two prizes up. But it was nominated last year for that award. This thing is a behemoth of a book. It's like 750 pages or something crazy like that. But it's a family epic that has four perspectives of like a nuclear family and just how all of their wants and past traumas and everything come to a culmination amongst and there's like this central financial crisis that they're dealing with for their car dealership, and the rising action in this book is incredible. I think the finale of this book might be my favorite finale of any book I've read. It changes perspectives quickly, and just everything is just coming to a head so quickly, and you're like on you're biting your fingernails until the very end of this book. So I loved it, highly recommend it, but it is very long. There's one section of this book from the mother's perspective. There's literally no punctuation the entire time, and it works really well kind of for like the way her stream of consciousness, like just flying by the seat of her pants. Is that the expression? I think it is. But yeah, it very much like replicates her character, but it can be hard to read, and you just have to be like, no, okay, I'm not going to understand everything here, but I just got to keep rolling. So if that turns you off, this thing is definitely kind of difficult to read at times and long, but I think the payoff is totally worth it. All right, this is, I believe, my top 3 now. Now is not the time to panic. Kevin Wilson. This, man, I know I've been spoilers the whole time. I'm trying not to. This one is about these 2 kids in a really small town in Tennessee who are kind of, they're edgy teens, bored for the summer, and they decide to get into some art. And you would think there's a small thing, kind of like nefarious thing they do, and it literally impacts the entire world and their lives forever. And it's just this really cool thought experiment about like how art can affect the world and like the artists, and it makes you just ask so many questions. I just love the scale of this book, but like it's huge in its scale because literally the whole world's affected, but it's also so tiny in this tiny town and like these 2 people's lives and how it's just influenced everything about who they are. And yeah, I loved it. I read this book super quickly. It's like a 250 to 300, but I read it, I think, at least for me in a weekend, is really fast for that, but just couldn't stop. And I've started reading Nothing to See Here. That's also a really wild book. So I think Kevin Wilson's bringing bangers here. So yeah, here are my top 2. I could toss a coin and choose which one I liked more. I loved both so much. There might be some recency bias because literally the number 1 book is the last book I read, but both were phenomenal. And without further ado, I'll go into it. Blue Sisters by Coco Mellers. Those are the 4 sisters right there in the book. There's something so evocative about this cover to me. But this book makes you laugh. It makes you cry. It's these sisters pick each other up as much as they tear each other down, and it's just I talked to my fiance Melissa about this book and just about how much it represents sisterhood. And obviously I'm not a sister myself, but it just, everything about it, they help each other out, but they just make each other's life so much harder than it needs to be sometimes. But it's all with love in their hearts, and it's about just anything from addiction to like work-life balance, I guess, and just, yeah, and all of them have been affected by this common tragedy, and they all have to come together against their will, really, but it brings them all closer, either if they wanted to or not. And I don't know, there's so many great character moments in this, beautiful scenes, and just I think it has just a lot to say about the human condition, which I know is kind of a pretentious term, but yeah, I absolutely love this book. Yeah, and I guess without further ado, we'll go to number one is Martyr. I believe this is in the New York Times top 10. So I'm following the crowd here, but I listened to this in Audible on a road trip back from Monterey, California. So that was a great setting for it. But man, this book is just so epic. It's got such a powerful voice from the main character, who's a recovering addict who has this grand view of himself and the world, but it's at odds with like an inner demons that he's fighting. And it from the very beginning, the voice is so strong, has such a bite to it. There's so many characters that have different influences on the main protagonist, from points of empathy, from points of like love, but everything just I'm having a hard time even describing this book. But I think one of my favorite things about it is it feels very grand and very small. It literally spans several continents and centuries and tells these like epic stories from the past and how they affect the modern day. It talks about like the war between Iran and the U.S. and just the effects of these characters fighting in the war there, and then also immigrating to the U.S. But at the same time, it's also super intimate with the main character, his trials and tribulations, but also it takes course over the modern day is only a few days, and it has this great rising action with it, like how he makes this trip to New York City from his small town in Indiana, and just you wonder how it's going to affect his psyche and just where his life's going to go. And yeah, I don't know. There's these super psychedelic, weird scenes. I don't even want to spoil anything about them, but they're these super surreal, like dreamlike sequences that are very unexpected in a book like this. And yeah, I don't know. It's really funny at times, super dark, and yeah, it really has everything. And I think it has a lot of great things to comment about, like, well, martyrdom, as it says there, and like the meaning of life and death, and like how you affect the world, but also just what it means to be happy, to be content or not content. And yeah, I don't know. I thought it was phenomenal. So this video is, I'm sure, super long, so thanks for sticking through it. But yeah, those are my favorite books, and I can't wait to do this next year. Phenomenal books throughout this year. Many of these are from 2024. And yeah, thanks for watching.